Hello, and thank you for attending the Responsible Trade Worldwide webcast this afternoon. During today's webcast, we'll be taking a look at workplace grievances, offering insight and guidance on how to tackle the associated issues. Our webcast today will be presented by our General Manager, Robert Purse. Robert has extensive experience in HR and a keen interest in metrics. So it's at this point I'm going to hand over to Robert, who's going to talk you through how to manage conflict in our organisations.
Welcome to the second in this series of four.
Welcome to the second in this series of four webcasts.
This series of webcasts,
our aim
of value to your organisation through your involvement with responsible trade worldwide, but also to demonstrate how you can make a positive difference to the success of your organisation and your supply chains. What grievances cost? According to the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development and data from the Department for Business, a single formal grievance typically involves 9 days of management time. Taking an average middle manager's salary, this means that a formal grievance can easily cost £1,600. The average unit cost faced by an employer as a result of responding to an employment tribunal claim is £3,900. Poorly managed workplace conflict is estimated to cost British employers £24 billion every year, which is double the headline cost of absenteeism. Our own research indicates that over a quarter of HR professionals are spending as much as 1 day a week, more than 45 working days every year, on workplace conflict. This is equivalent to more than £5,500 each per year. And these figures almost certainly understate the full commercial situation and fail to properly account for a range of issues that include lost production, diversion of managers from their day job, and employment tribunal awards and costs when an issue cannot be resolved internally, and lastly, damage to reputation directly or through your supply chain. Historically, individual workplace grievances have tended to be reported in purely numerical terms, for example, the number of current grievances. Some organisations do contrast and compare current grievance levels with past years. In my experience, these are lost opportunities. Expressing workplace conflict in monetary terms has far more impact for managers and is not so difficult to achieve. We believe that one of the best measures is the frequency measure, which provides a good indication of the scale of the problem. For a basic frequency measure, take the number of individual grievances, divide by the number of employees, and simply multiply by 100. This can be enhanced by producing a rolling annual average, which will give a clearer indication of any emerging trends, and also comparing current data with previous years. We look at monitoring individual grievances. It is something of a cliche, but if something is not measured, then it will not get managed. If you do not monitor the frequency and cost of grievances, then you'll have no basis for measurement or management. So when you have the data, then what next? Internal comparisons and external comparisons. Comparisons are important. It is useful to have an appropriate benchmark to judge your organisation against others. However, the ultimate key is active management. On the basis of the classic quote, "Not all that can be counted counts, and not all that counts can be counted," it is the taking of action which is ultimately important. Looking now at grievance policy and practice. We advise that all employers should have a grievance policy. It can be very useful if matters proceed to external proceedings, such as an employment tribunal. Assuming that you have a policy, let's just look at some basic principles. The policy needs to be fair, it needs to be applied consistently, it needs to be appropriate, and wherever possible, it should be independent. There are a number of steps. Informal steps. Your policies and procedures and those of your supply chains need to encourage early resolution. The government is currently changing the tribunal system to ensure that conciliation and mediation are considered before more formal steps are taken. So your grievance policy would do well to state that all grievances will be taken seriously, but that early resolution will be the first step. Formal procedures will only be invoked when early resolution has been attempted or considered. If you do not have this in your policy, potential complainants may think they can go straight to the formal stages and demand an investigation, which may or may not be appropriate. Looking at formal steps, let's look at fairness and independence. In our experience, if the parties to a grievance believe that it has been fairly and objectively investigated, then they're more likely to accept the decision. Workplace conflict is an uncomfortable issue, and one that many of us, including the managers and HR professionals, seek to avoid. Conflict avoidance, after all, is a natural human tendency, particularly for managers who are unprepared and untrained to handle difficult conversations. We actively encourage employers to give their line managers the skills that they need to take ownership over the management of conflict in the organisation and not to turn a blind eye. With greater confidence and skill to acknowledge disputes and differences and take the lead role in making sure they're resolved, the entire culture of the organisation shifts to one that recognises and prevents conflict at an early stage. We positively encourage organisations to promote the premise that everyone in the organisation has a role in preventing and reducing workplace conflict and encouraging a culture of collaboration and cooperation. So how can you make a difference? Well, big question, but here are some ideas. Encouraging employee engagement. Making your organisation and your supply chains a good place to work. Encouraging a positive work-life balance. Ensuring that you have appropriate procedures in place, and considering early, informal, alternative dispute resolution methods that might include mediation, but hopefully will avoid formal grievances. Touching on mediation, what is it? Workplace conflict can arise for many reasons, including perceived discrimination, jealousy over a promotion, underperformance, incompatible working styles or personalities, opposing targets, or even return to work interventions. Whatever the issue, mediation can provide a quick, pain-free and cost-effective way of resolving matters. Mediation is an informal dispute resolution process, facilitated by an impartial and professionally trained mediator. It is aimed at bringing two or more parties together to clear up misunderstandings, explore concerns, and ultimately reach an amicable resolution. So when should you use mediation? Mediation can be used at many different stages of the conflict process. Informally, during the early stages of a dispute, mediation can be used as a highly effective intervention to resolve conflict. At this stage, the mediation is entirely voluntary and confidential, involving an independent, impartial person, the mediator, helping two or more participants or groups reach a positive solution that's acceptable to all. The focus here is on restoring relationships and moving forward. Mediation can also be used at the formal stage, providing all parties are willing to put the formal grievance process on hold. Mediation here follows the same principles as the informal stages. And finally, we have post-formal. Far too often, following a formal grievance or disciplinary case, the parties involved are in need of mediation support to help them integrate back into the workplace. This is a very effective support process, which can include a more formal approach to the sharing of agreements that have been reached by the participants. Let's look now at linkage. There is an understandable tendency to view workplace grievances as a standalone issue, and a negative one at that. At Responsible Trade Worldwide, we think that this is a flawed view. If you monitor the kinds of grievances coming forward, and even encourage people to come forward with their concerns before they become full complaints, and welcome the feedback, you'll gain invaluable insight into the culture created in your organisation and supply chains, and the maturity of your HR practices. You'll be able to spot themes and trends which will alert you to priority action in one or other department or supplier, training and coaching for staff or managers, or, if more serious, potentially to disciplinary procedures. In addition, we believe that the concerns raised in grievances will link to other strategies such as absenteeism, staff turnover, and staff well-being.
Thank you, Robert, for that insight. I think we'll all agree it was really very interesting. Thank you all again for your time today. But before we go, we just want to give you a brief recap on our upcoming webcasts. On Thursday the 14th of February, we'll be exploring staff turnover, again with Robert, and we'll be looking at organisational culture on Thursday the 21st of February. We look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you again for your time.